Littlest was tired of taking orders, but he figured with the right attitude, a big hat, and an inquisitorial rosette, he could give all the orders he needed. Reginald here. I have a rather delightful build for you, actually. This has become one of my favorite things to play lately. It's a really fun build that does a lot of things very well, including being stylistic and themed, a bit more cerebral, and still a whole bunch of fun. It uses some of my favorite weapons in the game, and has great aesthetics. On top of all of that, the build lets you be a Commissar, which I think is just darn fun. The key thing this build does is answer the question, but what about the bolter? After all, I saw a lot of people talking already about the plasma gun. It's great, and I tried it first with this build, but I just kept thinking to myself, like, couldn't I use the bolter with this build to do the same thing? A lot of the problems that the plasma gun has are the same as the bolters, right? Long reload times, kind of slow to maneuver around with, etc. Plasma gun's actually faster than the bolter in that sense, but still. And turns out I was right. The build works quite well with the bolter. It makes up for a few of its weaknesses. Like, okay, you've got a really long reload, so you're standing around doing nothing for a while. Well, with this build, you can ping targets and still provide your team with a direct benefit. And that's pretty nice, actually. Also, since it's more of a support-focused build, the bolter is pretty good for just bursting down stuff in front of the team that is pretty dangerous. A big horde full of specials and mixed elites, just blast everything, reload for a little while, and the team will survive that occasion. It's kind of like having a grenade in your pocket you can chuck out, just like this build actually has, but it's your ranged weapon instead. It's really handy in hallways, and it does a lot of stuff well. You guys know how to use the bolter, so maybe I'll skip additional commentary on it, but we can get into it a little later, perhaps. Let's jump into the build guide itself. Build name, Reginald's Cornerstone, Cavalcade Commissar. Intended role, generally a flexible build, strong in melee, and especially strong in ranged combat, good for bursting down targets and clearing the way when things get messy. Crowd control is a strength, but primarily useful as a support build, with a big focus on buffing the team and yourself. Weaponry, Cadia Mark IV Assault Chainsword, Locke Mark IIB Spearhead Bolt Gun. For curios, I'll be using toughness, stamina, and health. I think all three are important in this build to give you a nice flexible disposition. Blessings. For the Cadia Mark IV Assault Chainsword, I'll be using Savage Sweep and Rampage. These two blessings are basically peak for a build that's not focused on crit, and the Savage Sweep is important for giving you the opportunity to get lots of cleave. This is good for crowd control and helps you manage those larger groups of enemies on a vet who's going to be swinging pretty slow. This is a fast weapon in of itself, but the swing speed on normal vet is slow as it is. For modifiers on this weapon, you'll generally want mobility as your dump stat and not penetration. Finesse should be one of your highest stats alongside damage and shredder. For perks, you'll probably want to pick up Unyielding for sure, and Maniacs might be the right choice, but I don't have it, and it's been okay. I can't usually one-tap muties, but I can usually get close enough. I still think Maniacs might be worth it, especially after the patch 15 nerfs to the Chainsword's rev attacks. For the bolt gun, we'll be using Shattering Impact and Pinning Fire. Pretty standard fare here, but excellent nonetheless. I would probably take Unyielding and Carapace if I could, but since I don't have Carapace, Unarmored isn't bad. I find Dregs to be pretty tanky against the bolter, which makes no sense to me. I know they're Nurgle blessed, but come on, they're just guys in flesh. They should explode the same when I hit them with a bolt gun. For modifiers, you'll probably want to have a high damage stat, reload speed, and collateral. I'd probably dump on mobility, but not too hard, and stability is going to be, of course, a good choice, since you do want to actually be able to aim down sights from time to time and get a reliable shot, especially since this weapon has a high finesse damage modifier right now and is good at clicking heads. This is especially true for bosses. Key nodes, Charismatic, Shredder Frag Grenades, Survivalist, Demolition Stockpile, Voice of Command, Duty and Honor, and the Focus Target Keystone with Target Down, Focused Fire, and Redirect Fire. Priority nodes. These are things you can definitely flex on, but I really find that both Longshot and Volley Adept benefit the bolt gun. Longshot less so, but still. Volley Adept is huge on the bolt gun and allows you to get a lot more uptime. I also think if you can afford it, Precision Strikes is worthwhile. Originally I was running this build with the additional talent of Confirmed Kill, but I've since removed it in favor of Precision Strikes to get the headshot bonus on melee. That's why I think it's so important. I also was previously running Competitive Urge, but I think you can ditch that in favor of this ranged damage node in combination to get you to Precision Strikes. Swing patterns for melee. With the Chainsword, there are some very simple swing patterns. You can do light spam into light groups of bruisers and stuff like that, but primarily you're going to be using the following combo, which I find to be the most reliable for getting good horde clear effects. It's going to be heavy 1, heavy 2, light, heavy, 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 light, and then repeat that. This is the best I've found for hordes. If you start getting too much pressure, you can always do a push and a push attack. The push attack is a thrust, and I will specify something here. This is about right. This won't hit, but the push attack should. It has just a touch more reach. And that's all you need sometimes to deal with some threats. Pretty solid on headshots. And you can use a rev while doing it if you need to. Let's get into a discussion on this build. This one's going to take a little longer because there's a lot more to cover. The key thing that we're doing in this build is focusing on support. This build is fine in terms of its actual damage output in both melee and at range. However, it's not focused on that compared to some builds, and so it's going to lag behind a little bit. That is okay. The available utilities we get out of the keystone and out of the ability is really quite impressive. Voice of Command replenishes your toughness and staggers all enemies within 9 meters. This can be very strong and can even stagger bosses. I know a lot of people know that already, but seriously, it's good. Duty and Honor gives everyone around you in coherency plus 50 toughness for 15 seconds, and you can exceed the maximum of your toughness by 50. So if you're at max or even below it, as long as you can gen enough, you can get back to that maximum amount. This is really strong when paired with some of the other things we're going to be doing in the keystone. What Focus Target gives us is every 2 seconds we get a new stack of this talent. When we ping a target, we get 4% additional damage for each stack on that target. This can be combined with Focus Fire to increase the stacks to 8. That's 3 more stacks from the base of 5. This will net you around the range of, I think it's 36% extra damage to your target. This is strong against bosses, also against crushers, anything that's got enough health pool to make a big difference. Obviously, it's not bad if you have somebody using a lighter damage, more DPS-y focused weapon, like say an auto pistol, since it can stack up the damage required to kill something very quickly. It's going to be a little less impactful on revolvers, for example, which one-tap most things on headshot. But if you have someone like myself, who has a revolver that can't quite touch the breakpoint on a drag gunner, well, this has pushed me over the edge when my friends have run it. So it can be a pretty nice talent. But that's not really the best part of this build. See, I mentioned getting that over toughness, and I mentioned toughness. Veterans right now have a toughness problem, and one of the things you get from this build is target down. When a tagged target dies, replenish 5% toughness and 5% stamina for each stack of focus target applied to you and allies' adherency. This is important because it's the same general buff as confirmed kill. It can give you 10% of toughness back on elite specialist or specialist enemy kill and a further 20% toughness over 10 seconds. We're not going to get that regen, but you are going to be getting a pretty fabulous return. With 8 stacks, you can get an awful lot of toughness back on a specific kill, and sometimes that can be pretty bursty, but even if it's not, you're going to typically be getting no less than 2 stacks. That's 10% toughness every time, and stamina. And if you're running low on stamina in a fight, you can choose to kill an elite to give yourself some stamina to keep yourself going, blocking and dodging. This has proven so good that in my runs so far, I have ditched all toughness nodes. This is pretty neat because now I can focus on that keystone and give the toughness that I'm generating mostly for myself to everyone else. I also need to mention Iron Will here. I almost forgot it, but honestly, it's so good. Iron Will gives you reduced toughness damage of about 75% toughness, and it's very easy to maintain that when you've got a decent amount of toughness gen coming back from popping elites and otherwise killing stuff. There's several other details I need to tell you about focus targets, so we're going to look at those. Redirect fire functions like this, and it is an extremely important talent. I think it's really easy to overlook it because you see 1.5% damage and you think, oh wow, big deal. It lasts for 10 seconds, and it can get 1.5% per stack. At 8 stacks, that's 12% damage for the whole team that's in coherency with you, as long as they have that 50% charismatic radius affecting both Voice of Command's radius and your redirect fire's ability to apply. The whole team can very reliably get that 12% extra damage. Now you might be saying, oh, 12% extra damage doesn't really push me over any particularly exciting breakpoints, and that may be the case in some ways, but it is going to make clearing hordes faster by default through most of the game and killing some tougher enemies quicker. But here's where the thing gets interesting. Unlike the rest of this keystone track, redirect fire will actually additively stack. So let's say you only have 2 of your focus target stacks available to you when you start out. And when you kill that first target and those 2 stacks are applied, you're going to get 3% damage to the team. But by that point, you should have probably gotten another 2 stacks. So when you go and you apply that to the next target and kill it, it's additive. Now you're sitting at +4. So the whole team is getting 6% damage. And all it took was about 4 seconds and whatever the time to kill was. It's actually less than that. I'll explain in a second on that less than that point, but suffice it to say, you can keep stacking. You only have to do that one more time. Just ping the first thing you can and kill it, and you're sitting at 6 stacks. Do it again, you're sitting at 8. You can just keep the uptime on this going as long as there's stuff to ping. So in an Auric Maelstrom mission where there's so many things you can ping, whether they be elite or specialist, you can keep this up for most of the game. And if you're just pinging wildly at everything, you can just keep this 12% up for the whole game. That is a huge boon, and keep in mind that since 2 stacks is about the usual you'll be applying when you're quick pinging multiple specialists, you'll still be getting 10% toughness consistently for the whole team while you're doing this, and stamina for somebody who's a little stamina hungry. This can be great, and about how that combines with Deadshot. Somebody's using Deadshot, and every time they kill an elite, they get 10% stamina back because they shot the one you pinged. There are some real synergies here that can work with multiple different types of builds and kits, and Deadshot's just one of them. All of this works really nicely, and you don't even need to run a toughness node at the top of your tree, freeing up your talent points a little bit. That's an impressive setup, but it gets more interesting than that. Focus target is not additive. However, it's not said anywhere in here, but it doesn't just function that 2 seconds gives you a new stack. The way it works, actually, is if a target dies, it adds 1 to your stacks. So if you're at 1 stack, which you probably will be almost immediately after pinging the first target and then killing it, you will gain back another stack. This puts you at 2, almost as quick as you can kill your enemies. 2 to 3 stacks is the minimum application you're going to have, and that's an additional 8 to 12% damage on your priority target, combined with your consistently available 12% damage on redirect fire. That is a minimum of 20% damage on typical, with 24 being more common. And that's not even accounting for the ability to apply a larger number of stacks to a big target to get a big bonus to the damage on that target. And should things fall off, the pings last long enough that you can get another 8 stacks and re-ping your big boss target to maintain that 32% damage. That is pretty huge, especially when combined with things like Bring It Down and precision strikes for headshots on your own ability. Plus, with For the Emperor, everybody within coherency gets 10% melee base damage and 10% range base damage when you ult. So you can make yourself pretty effective in a melee fight, even though you're pretty slow swinging due to your rending and this ability. Another quick focus target detail. For focus target, if you re-ping the same target, you don't lose stacks. You only apply new stacks if your stacks exceed the previous application. So if you applied at 5 and you apply a next ping at 6, it goes up by 1. If you apply at 5 but then hit it again at 4, it just stays at 5. That's how that works, at least as far as I am aware. This build has performed extremely well for me. It keeps my team alive very well throughout the game, and it keeps me alive very well throughout the game. I'm actually very surprised by how tanky I can be when running this build, not just because of voice of command, but also the general sustain from maintaining my buffs. Plus, if you're playing this ping-focused build buff system, it's actually pretty fun. It's like a little mini game you can play the whole game. The bolter has a long reload, so if I haven't killed an elite recently with it, then maybe I'll just stand around and ping stuff while I do that big old reload. If I have killed an elite with it, maybe I don't want to reload it right now. I want to save that opportunity for later. Maybe I've only fired a few shots to kill an elite, now I've got that reload buff. So I might go in with my chainsword instead and keep pinging priority targets for my other ranged team members. The pinging minigame is fun because you basically look around at what your teammates are pinging and just ping that. If you can try to ping everything you're about to kill as well, as long as it's an elite or specialist. So you can just constantly get that uptime on the buffs, and the buffs feel good to apply. If you're playing this well, you're just going to be pinging like mad to keep uptime on that 12% damage buff, and you're going to only reserve larger ping growths for when, well, there's natural downtime, which does happen, or because you know something big is coming, like you spotted a Crusher patrol, or you know that you're going to be fighting something nasty. Not, as some people have said, hard to do to get big pings. It's not hard to do to get a lot of pings, and you don't have to mitigate your ping style. In fact, I strongly recommend pinging everything you can so you can get those constant buffs. Even if they're small buffs, if the flow of them is as high as it can be in Auric Maelstrom, it's actually pretty strong. Then you just do your normal thing, as if you're just playing the game, and it feels fantastic the whole time. So, alright, with that, we're going to hop into a demo on this build, and then we'll call it a day.
Bring him down! Give him hell! He's down! Here you go! I ain't scared of you! Grenade up! Let him go! He's down! I'll make some war piece! Nice work, soldier! Taking things dead. Hold! Hound's dead! Need Medicaid! Diamante!
Alright, well that was our demo. Thank you so much for watching and visiting. I really always appreciate it. Please leave me a comment below if you liked this video or just want to chat about it. I'm always happy to hear your thoughts, and some of you have made suggestions that I've implemented in other videos, so it's not like I don't read them. In fact, I respond to every comment I get. Additionally, you can subscribe to my channel if you like. I make content like this, and I have some other cool stuff coming out soon in regards to using the chain axe on various targets, so you might want to see that if you're interested in chain weapons, which is kind of my forte. Otherwise, have yourself a lovely night. Bye-bye.